What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Citizen Defense Podcast, formerly known as the Concealed Carry Texas Podcast. If y'all haven't yet, go subscribe to our new Instagram page. That is at citizen_defense. You can get all your updates for our shows and on our training content that we're doing. You probably have about another week before we shut down the Concealed Carry Texas Instagram page. So make sure you jump over if you want to continue support. And you can also find us on YouTube. We're trying to, I hate to admit this, trying to do the TikTok thing, kind of get with the trend, stuff like that. So if you want, you can go find us over at TikTok. It's the same handle, Citizen Defense. And outside of that, that's about it. If you haven't yet, or subscribe to the podcast. And if you really want to help us out, go ahead and leave a rating. You can do that on Spotify and definitely leave us a review. You know, if there's something that we're talking about that you like, some things that you don't like, or some topics that you would like us to cover, we're trying to make sure that we monitor all that stuff a lot closer these days. And, you know, we'd be really happy to hear y'all's input of what y'all would like. So please go give that a shot. Check it out and let us know what y'all think and how we're doing. Outside of that, moving forward, we were supposed to have a guest this episode, but he has a very particular job. He got called out. So things have kind of flipped around on us. We will try to get him back on. I think he has a lot of input he's doing a lot of things in training content in the training world that I think other people aren't considering. If y'all follow on Instagram, you saw that I run one of his drills this past weekend, and he's putting out some good stuff. So we will try to get him back on here. But until then, we were kind of spitballing pre-show about what we were going to do for this, essentially this Phil episode, right? Since we kind of got screwed up on the guest situation. And we kind of got to talking about like the incident with the Super Bowl parade with the Chiefs in Kansas City. And we're not going to go into, we're not going to go into the politics of the stuff. We want to stick with the training aspect of things, the situational awareness and lifestyle of defensive lifestyle, right? So we're going to move away from the politics and stay more neutral on that and focus on the hard skills and the mindset. And with that, we kind of thought this would be a good place to kind of discuss mindset and maybe plans, tactics, family plans. I don't know if you could say tactics really. But
Yeah,
we're going to
more
kind of delve
just
into it.
more just kind of how to approach situations. Really, what I that it tends to happen, right? Large gatherings, that tends to be the target for bad things to happen. That's why we always talk about being aware of your surroundings. That's part of why we carry, as a concealed carry uh, individual that practices carrying self defense, be it OC spray or your a carry weapon, pistol, any of those above, and even just if you're someone that doesn't carry, uh, with the nature of large gatherings, the more people you get together, unfortunately, you get people from, all from everywhere coming together to celebrate something. Okay. Well, whenever you're going into a large group of people, what do you need to think about? What are we like? If I had been going to the Chiefs Super Bowl parade, some things I would have been thinking about is one, how many people are going to be in my party, right? Am I going to be going with my family? If I'm going with my family, we need to have a way to either meet up or regroup. And I'm not even saying if something happens, I'm just saying that's a good practice for if you're just going to a large, be it a football game, large gathering, something like that, always have a set location where should something happen, y'all get split up. Hey, this is you can call it a rally point, meetup location, whatever you want to call it. But it can be, maybe it's the entry gate you came in, maybe it's a certain store, if you're somewhere like a mall, maybe it's a certain store that everybody knows where it is, food court, maybe basically there's a location that everybody in your party knows that you can meet up. Now, part of why that becomes important in this day and age is a lot of these large gatherings, your cell phones actually will either become extremely sluggish, to the point where maybe you're sending a message, you're not getting a message back, you don't know if your message was delivered, or you're trying to call someone, you're not getting through because you have enough people there that it's just essentially overloading the network, right? You can't make a contact. And that's where actually coming back to just, hey, okay, we got split up. Say someone went to the bathroom and then all of a sudden maybe there was a fire, maybe anything happened. We need to meet up. It's a good practice going into any of these situations to say, okay, guys, talk to your group, say, hey, should anything happen and you can't get back to us, or we get split up going somewhere, we all know that we will meet at X location. I think that's one of the things that I don't, maybe y'all listening do that already. Maybe that's something that y'all practice already, but that's something that I've started doing, especially with like I think the last baseball game I went to, I couldn't hardly use my phone. Like it just wasn't the reception, just even though I had full reception, nothing on it was really working. And so that was kind of where I really looked into it. And I was like, man, my wife, if she went to the bathroom by herself and then, we ended up leaving or something happened, I don't know how I would have gotten in contact with her at that point. She's fairly bad with directions. So I couldn't just say, oh, well, we'll meet at the car, because I would be worried about her, honestly, whether or not she'd be able to find the car, because we set a pin on the map, but and that time maps wasn't working, service wasn't there. So that's one of the things that I've started doing to try to help, just even initially when I get there, trying to just start that game plan of being aware of where you're at, being aware of the location, being aware of some of the things that are not going to be available to you. Maybe you can't hear over the people, like the Chiefs parade. That could have came into play, right? Once shooting starts, people are going to tend to scatter or run or push or shove. So if you're, say you're not anywhere close enough to be a part of that, and you're just kind of getting pushed by the mob of people, and if you get separated from your family, that's kind of what I'm saying, as far as that's why it would be good to have a known location of this is where we're going to meet up.
Yeah, and I think that just in general practice for, I guess you could say, for normal preparedness, right? Like that's a good game plan for natural disasters, things like that. Because, for example, a lot of people, and for us, example, I'm at work across town, my wife's at work across town, our kids at daycare. If there was some sort of disaster that, we didn't have communications with each other, we would at least have a plan to meet somewhere. Do we necessarily have that communicated at this moment? No, we don't. We should,
Yeah.
but we don't. But no, that is definitely a good plan. And we've kind of done that. We've done that when we've gone to Disney, right? When we've taken the kid to Disney, because it is very easy to get separated in those crowds of people. So this is very much falls into just the generalized concept of good practice. Outside of that, the other thing that you need to consider for where you're going, like for example, the Chiefs parade, is this going to be a permissive environment, right? Are you going to be able to carry a firearm? I don't know about a parade. I would guess that being that was probably a public parade, that there wasn't any restrictions on that, but that's something that you need to be mindful of, because if you can't carry concealed, then what's your next best option? Are you carrying any edged weapons? Are you carrying any non-lethal stuff? Like, yes, you could say taser. I don't see too many people implying tasers anymore. But OC spray, things like that. I carry OC spray with me wherever I go. I have a pocket knife, but that's a cutting tool, not really a defensive tool. It could double as one, absolutely if needed. And then another thing would be to consider is going to be your hands-on skills or your empty-handed skills. Are you capable of dealing with somebody up close and personal? And that's kind of good to segue into the situation that had happened, right? I didn't, I breezed through the story today, and all I know is that one of the shooters, I believe there were several, one of them was taken down by several individuals there in the parade. Now, and kudos to those guys, because from what I understand, what I read, shots popped off, people took off, and I'm almost sure that a lot of the injuries of the people that were injured is due to crowd issues, right? People scattering, kind of
Mhm.
like was the concert in Houston. I forgot what it was. That they had all
No,
those
the
reports.
Astroworld, yeah, the Astroworld concert.
Yeah. But that
Yeah.
stuff happens all the time, right? People panic, they run, they push people out of the way, they trample folks. It happens. But kudos to those guys for like just acting and getting to it. And that's one of those things that you really do need to assess your empty handed skills. Now, am I a professional in anything like that? Absolutely not, right? When it
Hmm.
comes to hands on martial arts, have I been in some backyard scraps and things like that? And, yeah, I've never really gotten into throwdown fist fights with guys. I finally had the opportunity, and this is me just being open and transparent with everybody. I finally had the opportunity to start my jujitsu journey, and that has very much been an eye opener, right? And I went into it, I didn't go into it thinking that I was going to do something, right? And I would like to have, I'm going to reach out to John Valentine and see if we can get him on. He's a big combatives guy. And when you're going up against somebody who is trained in that, right? Because the guy that I'm training with, he was a big wrestler in college, and he started his jujitsu journey too. But he, man, like, you are against somebody that really knows what they're doing. Like, you are helpless, man. Like, you are helpless. And and I'm not saying that like to deter anybody from being afraid to go hands on with people. What I'm saying is this is a good way to be humbled and realize how much you don't know, right? Just kind of as we would talk about is when people that are first getting started, you know, going to a carry journey, they go to a feel good training class, teaches
Hmm.
them a few things, we make sure it's the slow down and get your hits. We make sure we get our hits on target. We go through a couple of drills that represent scenarios. All right, chief, you're good to go. You know, that's that's not really the same as going to a class that's going to be a performance based shooting class that is going to push your limits, teach you how to, what you should be looking for to develop yourself as a shooter. That's, like this. If I was to go to, just a simple weekend class, I mean, and not to knock any combatives or anything like that, but, you really you could go learn some key things that would very much be helpful in those situations, but you still need to drill them out all the time. You can't
Hmm.
just go to it one time and expect it to be ingrained, especially in a high stress situation. You got to drill this stuff out. So just be aware of that for any close
Yeah.
encounters, up close person. I mean, God, we see guys getting, you know, knock down, drag out fights over road rage at a red light, right? I mean, this stuff
Yeah.
happens all the time.
Yeah. So, what you're talking about, right? It's proficiency with whatever tools you're going to use, be it your handgun, right? That's generally what we tend to focus on. But you brought up a good point. I have no history in jujitsu. I have no history in wrestling. I have, as far as that goes, I've had no actual training as far as hand to hand, any type of combat. Like I'm just talking about anything. I've never had any actual training to do that. So I understand in a hand to hand confrontation, I am, I don't know what the person across from me has done, but if they've done anything, I'm already starting at a disadvantage. So that's where that's going to be popping into my head. If my hands are the only thing I have, maybe it may change my reaction to the situation I'm presented with. I'm probably not, maybe I'm not going to just dart in there and try to grab somebody. Again, all different scenarios, right? But I understand, like, from a using my hands for combat, and that would be the same thing for using a knife as far as for self-defense. Like, I'm not proficient with using a knife for self-defense, so I understand, kind of like you alluded to, my knife is more as a tool, not I don't carry it as a self-defense weapon because I'm not really planning on using it, and I haven't trained to use it as such. Again, something that would be cool to do, something I would like to learn, but I fully understand my deficiency in that. And I know I'm not someone trained up to it, and I'm not someone that's proficient with using it in that manner. So that's not going to be my go-to, right? That's not going to be like, oh, I'm going to do that before I use my, say, OC spray, my non-lethal that I'm carrying, or if I'm carrying, my actual pistol, then that's probably going to be what I use because that would be what I'm most proficient with. But
100%
yeah.
agree. Yeah. I mean, and it's not like I'm saying, like I said, guys, like I'm like I'm lucky enough to have one-on-one coaching or like a very small group with what I'm in. Um, and we're not working ranks, things like that. We are just, it's a group of guys with someone who is very skilled. We are training and learning, and we are doing our best to develop as individuals in our skill and our performance. And that's great for me because that translates to me with on the shooting side of it. Okay. I don't really try not to get too hung up. Would I like to make GM one day? You bet. But I don't know if that will happen, right? But what I am focusing on is building my performance, setting goals, and building that performance to the goals that I want to reach. And that's just how I set my bar, and that's kind of where I'm setting my bar to in hand to hand. Like I said, I'm not saying I think people ought to go be black
Yeah.
belts, but the guy that I'm training with, he has said, he's like, you would be very surprised at, somebody who knows a little bit, how effective they can be against somebody that knows nothing, you
Yeah.
know. And we even briefly talked about what he does with his kids and training them like his little girls, and like, just how to use your feet and getting somebody off of you and creating distance and things like that. And he's like, I think every woman should take train in jujitsu for at least, you know, what did he say? Like 4 to 6 months. He's like, just to give them some kind of grasp of understanding of what it is like to fight with another individual who is
Mm-hmm.
trying to gain an advantage on you as well. And so, yeah, I mean, it is very much something you consider. And I get it, right? It's time and cost and things like that, but it's the real world is the real world. And that's just things you need to consider. But getting back to the crowd thing, so we've touched on, being able to have a rendezvous location for people that you're with if you can't get in contact with them.
Mm-hmm.
Is it permissive or non-permissive environment? What tools you're carrying, assessing what you're going to be able to carry and how you're going to be able to deploy it, and also assessing if it is a non-permissive environment, not just your tools, but your capability hands-on. And leading into that too is going to be the discussion is fight or flight, right? Like these guys, they hopped into action, they tackled this person, they saved lives. Kudos to these guys, man.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of people scattered. And this is something that I believe that you need to dig down deep and do some soul searching and figure out for yourself, your situation. And if your decision is that, man, I just need to get the hell out of there because for whatever reasons, maybe like me, I have a kid and I have a wife, and if they're there with me, I'm probably going to be less likely to be as aggressive with them, right? Because
Yeah.
my purpose is going to be protecting them and getting them to safety. Now, if it's a
Hmm.
situation that is happening, unfolding right in front of me, I have the means to stop it, and there's nowhere else like it's going to happen faster than I can remove myself from the situation. Yeah,
Yeah.
then you have to make the decision if you're going to act or not. And I think that's something that people really need to think about. Given whatever scenario, if you're going somewhere, all right, I'm going to a public event. All right, just shoot yourself an scenario, mental reps. Something happens, what would be my game plan? What would I do? And I think that's something very beneficial to just get in that mindset of what you would really do.
Yeah, and so part of even doing that, giving yourself the reps or just running through scenarios in your mind, you don't have to be 24. I'm not saying the whole time you're there, ignore the event you're going, run through scenarios, but when you get to the venue, you can look at it and go, okay, I roughly understand the layout. I kind of know where we're going to be at. Okay, if something happens, maybe we're going to retreat, over there behind that building or something like that. You've kind of evaluated your space and you've went, okay, I have a rough idea of what I might want to do. The other thing is just like any public space or anytime you're out in public, situational awareness, right? Look around you, see what people are doing. Is somebody acting weird? Is somebody just completely, maybe there's someone that seems agitated, nervous, or maybe they're just completely ignoring whatever the event is you're there for. Maybe they look like they got something else on their mind. They're fumbling in their backpack or something. They're basically, is there anyone that seems like they're just really outside the norm? And that goes back to looking around you and not burying your head in the phone or, paying attention to something that takes your eye, that ingrains you 100% where you're not going to be looking around and not aware of even the person standing next to you. Um, I, I think that's becomes a part of the bigger issue too, is we go to these events, be it a football game, baseball game, a parade. I'm sure as the parade's getting close, everybody's staring at the floats or what the people are riding on. That's going to be what's collecting everybody's attention. So that everybody's going to be looking that way. That might be a good time to just kind of briefly scan around you and be like, "Hey, is anybody acting strange near me?" Now it's a bunch of people, but best you can do is look around you in your general area and see, is there anyone that's acting that just kind of doesn't pass the funny look test?
Yeah,
Um,
you could I guess you could equate that to is like the way I think of it is don't let yourself get so drawn into something that you forget to pay attention to what's going on around you.
yeah,
Because you can easily do that with shows or whatever. And I've gotten into the habit now to where I catch myself looking around a whole lot more and watching people at different events and just seeing something. Oh, that's kind of weird. All right. Oh, okay. That guy was just, he
yeah,
looked like he was digging in a bag and he's trying to scratch his nuts or something. It's
yeah,
just something ridiculous like that. But it's just paying attention.
yeah. So, and that's in essence, we've kind of talked about most of the stuff you can do to kind of have yourself prepared, right? Basically having a plan when you go in there. That's how we talked about a rally point, rendezvous point. What am I going to do should something happen? Should we get split up? What are we going to do? We kind of lay that out, and that goes in, like Todd alluded to, that could be used for everything. I remember growing up, like when the firefighters would come to the school and do a presentation, like whenever I was younger, one of the things they always said is like, "Hey, do y'all have a meetup? If you have a fire in your house, where are y'all going to meet up?" And that was even one of the things they talked about, like, go home, tell your parents, where am I going to meet up if we have a fire in the house, and I go out the window or something like that, where do we meet up? So the rendezvous point is something that essentially you can have one at home, you can have one essentially everywhere you go. What are your self-defense options, right? What's the location? What can you bring? What can't you bring? And then the next is your proficiency with whatever you've got available to you, be it just your hands, be it non-lethals, lethal, understanding your capabilities with whatever you've got available to you, and then aware of your surroundings. You have to be. And that goes for anything. That goes for every day. That goes for driving in traffic. That goes for all that, right? Like Todd talked about people having road rage. You got to pay attention even when you're in traffic. If you see someone start darting in and out of traffic, or maybe you accidentally cut someone off and then they, you didn't realize it, but they've been following you now for the past 5 or 10 minutes, trying to get up beside you. That awareness comes in big on it, can just keep you out of, that next stage of, now I'm in a conflict. Maybe I see something coming and I just avoid it. Like, hey, we're stopping to watch the parade. Well, that guy looks weird over there. Hey, let's go step away from this guy, and you reposition yourself somewhere else to where you don't see that person that was kind of throwing that flag in your mind of, I don't know what that guy's up to. They're all sorts of different people, right? You may, like Todd talked about, you may look at somebody and go, man, that guy's weird. And then you realize, like, oh no, he was, whatever, maybe he couldn't find his phone or something. So he was being weird. You thought he was being weird, but he was actually trying to find his phone or his wallet or car keys. But if you've noticed that, then you can evaluate it. And then, like we said, if you've evaluated it and then you realize, okay, there's no threat there, you're good to go. If you think, well, there might be a threat there, you can now maneuver and move your family, your party away from that scenario, and you can position yourself to where you feel comfortable, and you don't see what you perceive to be possibly a threat at the time.
Yeah, and I think another thing that we could get into with this is, medical equipment. What kind of stuff do you carry on you? If you're going into these places like that, do you carry nothing? Do you carry something? I can give you an example of this generally. So whenever we go on, especially when we travel, I don't, we're usually kind of crunched on time anytime we travel when we're flying, even when we go to visit family in Florida. I don't deal with the hassle of taking my carry gun with me, right? I don't want to slow us down through TSA. I don't want to slow us down on pickup. We're already traveling with a 2-year-old. It's enough as it is, right? So I'll take, my general stuff, OC spray and a light. Always have those things with me. I can fly with the light, have that on the plane. Can work for plenty of things, right? One thing that I always have in our carry-on backpack, I always carry tourniquet, chest seal, packing gauze, and do I put an Israeli in there? I think I put an Israeli in there. So I have a compression bandage, packing gauze, tourniquet, chest seal. So I do carry those things with me whenever we're traveling, whenever we're out and about. We have the backpack with us, even if like my personal backpack, if like when we went to Disney, when I had my kids' backpack with me, I shoved all that stuff in my kids' backpack, right? I had it easily accessible. So I very much try to carry those things with me when we're out and about in unfamiliar places. Now, should I do a better job of having a more friendly pocket option that I can carry that with me every single day? 100%. I have it in my vehicle every day, right? Because I've come across car wrecks and things like that. It's easily accessible. We do some off-road stuff, camping, shit like that. It's great for. But yeah, so that's another consideration is first aid gear. Evan, what's your take on that?
Well, I agree 100%. Something to essentially stop a bleed, which is kind of what we're talking about. A basic first aid supplies. So, what you talked about, if nothing else, gauze, a pack of sterilized gauze can do wonders, right? You get a cut, you pack the gauze in there and help stop the bleed. Even that, just that little bit would help you. Is it a tourniquet? No. Is it a occlusive dressing that's going to stop something like a sucking chest wound? No. But that gauze alone, something clean that you could pack in a wound, and that would be something, like, hey, maybe your kid or maybe you lean against a piece of metal and slice your arm open. It's clean gauze. It's something you could put into your wound to just help pack that and stop the bleed. So, even if you were just going bare minimum, you could carry, band-aids for small scrapes and bruises, and you could carry clean, a couple packs of clean 2x2 gauze or 4x4 gauze, and it's something that you could pack into a wound and then hold pressure on it and essentially, at least if not stop, you can at least do a very good job of mitigating that bleed. So, maybe you don't want to carry a ton of stuff, but that's something that's fairly usable for most any injury you're going to get, that you could bring with you if you didn't want to bring extra stuff. Now, like what you talked about, all the stuff you had, Tom, that's good. That would be a very good daily carry, and that would be a carry. We tend to, as concealed carries, we start looking, or concealed, kind of from the concealed carry mindset, we always look at more or less bullet wounds, right? Something, or it could be stab wounds, but so we look at a puncture or something like that type injury, right? That's where that occlusive dressing is going to come in big for those, right? A wound to your abdomen, your upper abdomen or your chest area, that's generally where that's going to be applied. And then even like a tourniquet is good to bring. They're cheap, they're relatively lightweight, they're relatively small, and it's something you can apply. Most I don't know how to put this. It's not overly complex to where someone can't figure out how to apply it, and it's something you could apply yourself to you. That being said, you don't have to automatically go to that. Like I said, that's why I was saying, like, the gauze, right, is a big thing. Like I carry gauze just because it's fairly, interchangeable for whatever I need to do. Hell, if I need to just clean something, I can open up that pack of gauze and then use it to clean something, and then just replace it. It's cheap. So I think the first aid aspect of it is very good, and I do think it's something that gets overlooked. I
So,
carry. Oh, go ahead.
oh no, so for those of y'all that maybe just be tuning in yet, y'all don't know, Evans on a medical rescue team for the refinery that he works for. So he's done a lot of stuff. He's done a lot of training at the Teeks Academy here in College Station. And so I always look to Evan for if I have any, medical equipment questions or things like that, first aid stuff. He's my go-to source. I can ask him for free, right? Just text him. Um, but with that, like you talking about, you just carry packing gauze. Now they do. I would like us to get our hands on these. There's a company called Snake and Staff, and they're making what they call an everyday carry tourniquet, and it's about the
Okay.
size of a Glock 19 magazine. It's very
Okay.
small and slimline.
Yeah.
So just for us to try it and play with it, I've heard great things about it. But
Yeah.
regardless of that, talking about even just carrying packing gauze. Now, if you
Mm-hmm.
start looking at something like a traditional cat tourniquet, right? Like they have the plastic ring on them, like
Mm-hmm.
they can be for carrying in a pocket, they can be somewhat cumbersome.
Yeah.
Okay. If that's something out of the realm that somebody's like, well, would like to carry a tourniquet all the time, but I can't. I guess what I was going to say, in your opinion, if you had to if you had to decide, like, for your everyday carry, like you could carry one item,
Mm-hmm.
what would you like for stop a bleed? What would you choose?
Gauze. I mean, it would be packing gauze, because even before I put on a tourniquet, um, I'm going to try to pack a wound to stop it from bleeding. That's generally always your first. That's your first go-to, because inherently with tourniquets, when you put them on, now for the most part they're safe, right? But once you put a tourniquet on, you're essentially stopping blood flow to wherever you apply it. That's why anytime you put a tourniquet on, time, date, when it was applied, so that they know. So whenever you can get to a higher level of care, they know how long it's been on, when it was applied, all that good stuff. Um, I, I you can lose a limb and you're probably not gonna, you're not gonna bleed out from it, not at least not quickly. The body does a very good job at helping to stop bleeds, and especially pressure can help to stop bleeds. So it's one of those things of a tourniquet's great. Like if you've got the room to carry it, absolutely I would carry it. But to me, and this is just my perspective, right? This is my opinion. I would say clean packing gauze that I can stuff into something and then I can apply pressure to it. You know, like if I've got a free hand, I can hold it over it. Or if you're applying it to somebody, hey, hold pressure here right now. They've got the gauze in there to help it clot and they're holding pressure on it. More than likely, you're going to be able to stop the bleed or at least hold it off, you know, slow it down enough to where you can get help. That, and again, like what I'm saying is my personal perspective on it. Now, I'm also not, you know, I'm not ex-military. I haven't done stuff, you know, with from that aspect. I've seen more just real world, like, hey, someone, you know, someone got hurt, you know, they crush something or they have a bleed or burn or something like that, and we've responded to that. So it's one of those things of like, from my perspective, the first thing I would carry would be gauze because I'm more than likely I'm going to pack whatever's bleeding. That's why I was talking about cuts and things like that. Because if I have just a cut, say on my forearm, I don't need to go straight to putting a tourniquet like up on my bicep to stop all blood flow to my hand, right? Like I'm going to try to apply pressure just to stop it because in the end, I'm I'm not taking a risk of possibly hurting, you know, possibly causing any damage to my arm from the tourniquet. Like I said, most tourniquets are extremely good. Not saying you're going to cause damage to your arm, but it's one of those things of you're putting it on there, squeezing down, and if you end up for an extended period of time, it could lead to some issues. Now, would that stop me from using it if I needed it? Absolutely not. If you think you need a tourniquet to put a tourniquet on. You know, like I'm certainly not telling somebody to not use it, but that's my perspective. The first thing I would throw is clean gauze, sterile gauze, I should say, not just a
Yeah.
random pack of gauze, but you can get the little pre-sterilized packs of gauze and that's what I would keep in, like the first thing I would add to my bag would be that.
Yeah, and you can even buy them, you know, with the quick clot gauze. You know, it has
Yeah. Yeah.
a coagulating agent in it, or a hemostatic
Yeah.
agent in it.
Oh,
And
the other thing I was going to say real quick, throw if you're in your medical bag, always have at least two pairs of latex gloves or nitrile gloves or some type of gloves. Always remember, if you're going to apply first aid, even to a friend or someone you know, you may not know them that well. You know, that's one of the first things you'll learn whenever you take a course, CPR or anything, CPR first aid course. They'll tell you is bloodborne pathogens. Make sure you put gloves on first. Now, I'm not saying you're going to remember, you know, heat of the moment, all that stuff, but if you, yeah, so you don't know what someone, you know, be it your friend or someone you don't know, right? A stranger on the street, maybe they have a bloodborne pathogen they don't want to tell you about, or they're embarrassed to tell someone about. You need to have a way to protect yourself. Now that we're talking about first aid in this scenario, in your bag, you know, or whatever you're using, you know, for your actual, whether it's keeping stuff in your pocket, keeping stuff in a backpack, you know, extra stuff just in one of the pockets of your backpack. What I do for work, I carry in my pocket of my shirt, with my ID badge. I have a pair of gloves, nitrile gloves that are inside out, that I folded up inside out to keep them clean. And I keep them in my chest pocket of my shirt so that if I've got to respond immediately, I've at least got gloves. You know, first thing, you know, maybe something happens in front of me, I've at least got gloves, because you need to protect yourself, because depending on if somebody is carrying a bloodborne pathogen and you get it, you may be stuck with it for the rest of your life. So just that's something to do. And generally, like if you keep all your medical stuff in a pocket, get your stuff organized in that pocket, and then right on top of all your medical supplies, whatever you've got in there, set you a pair of gloves that are folded together right on top of it. So first thing when you open up or you go to reach for medical, you have to move your gloves to get to whatever medical supplies you're getting. That will help remind you in the heat of the moment, like, oh, let me grab these, throw these on. Okay, now I'm good to go. Now, is it, are you going to have safety glasses? Are you going to have a face shield because maybe there's stuff squirting out or something like that? No, like I'm not expecting you to carry all that. But at minimum, I would say if you're carrying medical supplies with the plan to use them, should they need to be used, make sure you carry something to protect yourself. And those gloves don't take up any more space than the stuff you're already carrying. And that's a very good thing to carry. You need to have that if you're planning on doing anything involved with first aid on anybody.
That's a good one. And I find it interesting that, and that's why I asked you, if you had one choice, would you carry what would you carry? And it is interesting that you said packing gauze, because everybody these days advocates for carrying a tourniquet.
Yeah.
And in your opinion, do you think that's because it's the easiest thing to apply with the least amount of effort to probably guarantee stopping a bleed or
Well,
a traumatic
yeah.
injury?
I mean, so my only problem, like, I'm not saying don't carry one.
Yeah, we're not saying that they're
Yeah,
bad.
the failure to me of that is you've just limited the parts of the body you can treat. You can treat arms and you can treat legs. That's it. With packing gauze, if you're shot in the stomach, I can pack gauze in there to stop you from bleeding out. It's sterile gauze. It'll be fine. I can pack it in there, stop you from bleeding. If you're shot in the shoulder, or if you're stabbed in the shoulder, I can put packing gauze in it. A tourniquet's not going to do anything. Yeah, right. A tourniquet's not going to do anything.
The neck.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you got a cut on your forehead. Yeah, right. You're not going to put it. And that's my only, like, that's why I'm saying packing gauze is a whole lot more versatile than your tourniquet is. Now, if you can absolutely have a bleed that will overpower packing gauze. I mean, that can happen. And then, yeah, if you have a tourniquet and it's on a limb, then absolutely. But the other thing is like, if it's high on a limb, you may not be able to put a tourniquet on it too, right? If it's upper bicep or upper thigh, again, it's goes back to knowing your equipment and understanding the limitations. If I only carry a tourniquet, I know if I see someone with their stomach cut open, I can't do anything about it. Right? I mean, it's just understanding your limitations, knowing what you can help with and knowing what you can't. Like, oh, that guy's got his stomach cut open. This guy's got an arm cut open. Okay, I can help the guy with the arm. I can't help the guy with the stomach. Now, and that's you can carry either. And if someone says, well, I only want to carry the tourniquet because that's what I was told to carry. Absolutely. It's better than nothing. You can address certain issues, you can address certain things. But that's just like from stopping a bleed, the first thing you do is apply pressure, and that's even without packing gauze, right? You put your hand over, and we do it naturally, right? If you cut yourself, you're going to, and you press your hand on it, it'll stop bleeding. You put your finger on something that you got cut open, you can stop the bleed. It's the same thing, just if it's a larger bleed, it's just a larger area, right? And that's kind of the initial steps of stopping any bleed. A tourniquet, generally, you're going to get to, if you're following steps on stopping a bleed, it would come a little bit later. Like, you would apply pressure. Does it stop? No. I put packing gauze in it. Did it stop? No. I apply more packing gauze and put more pressure on it. Did it stop? No. Okay, now I'm going to graduate to the tourniquet and put the tourniquet on because I physically can't stop it.
And even I try to think of, and we're definitely getting in the weeds on first aid here, not that it's bad.
Yeah.
But I generally try to think of my trauma kit in a generalized area.
Absolutely.
And like you said, I think a lot of people in the defensive mindset constantly think about that mass shooting situation, or I got shot, a loved one got shot, or they got stabbed or burglared or things like that. While those things aren't out of the realm of possibilities, what are you more likely to come across? A car wreck, somebody, a pedestrian that got struck, or anybody that, you know, any a
Or
workplace injury or things like
yeah,
that. That's like, it frustrates me so bad because at my workplace, I guess they were required to buy some tourniquets, and I saw them and I looked at them and they're labeled as cat tourniquets. They are 100% not cat tourniquets. They're the
yeah,
Chinese knockoffs.
yeah,
And I tried to tell, which they were just worried about kind of filling the
yeah,
container. And I went and got my tourniquet out the car and I was like, look, here's the
yeah,
difference between a real tourniquet and this knockoff. And they're like, well, it'll still cinch down and it worked. It's like, man, I really hope none of us ever
yeah,
need this, you
yeah,
know? So
yeah,
you do have to watch out for quality of things and stuff
yeah,
like that. Make sure you're
yeah.
buying legitimate gear.
Yeah, most of your first aid you're going to apply are going to be, hey, you cut yourself with a knife at home doing something, or like you said, maybe you're at work and someone cut themselves with something at work, or crushed their finger, or did something like that. Like it's always we kind of tend to plan for the worst, but I would say throw a couple band-aids in there. Throw stuff like throw some simple things that
Yeah,
hey,
boo boo kit.
oh man, like, yeah, I just, I tripped and I just scraped the living crap out of my hand. Oh crap, I got one of the, I got a 2x2 bandage I can slap over it. Okay, cool. Yeah, throw easy stuff in there if you've got room. Um,
Yeah.
that's
If you're
just,
carrying, if you're one of those that you carry a bag everywhere you go, you know, you're a commuter and you have a backpack, man, the world is your oyster at that point. And I say
yeah,
carry a
yeah.
full trauma kit. Can.
Well, but
But if
that's
you're
even,
limited,
yeah.
you know, then carry what the best that you can. Something's better than nothing.
And that's where I would say, like, if you're carrying a backpack, pick a compartment in your backpack and establish that as okay. This is where I'm going to keep my medical supplies. Right then, here's the size of it. Look at what you can fit in it, and go. Okay, here's what I can carry. I put tourniquet in. I can't put extra band-aids in, or but set up a small compartment for it. Or if you're in your car a lot commuting, maybe you just have a bag in your car, like a small first aid bag in your car for things like that, wrecks, stuff like that. Because I mean, if you're involved in a wreck, maybe you need it. I was in a wreck and my bottom teeth got driven through my lip, right? So I was bleeding everywhere.
I remember that.
I mean, stuff happens, and it's nice to be able to have something to put on, and to just at least, if nothing, maybe not stop the bleed, but at least stop the blood from getting everywhere.
Yeah.
That can do a lot to calm people down. That can do a lot for things like that. Facial injuries, scratches, cuts are going to bleed because your face bleeds a tremendous amount. Now, the amount of blood that's coming out is not generally from something like that. It's not going to be enough to worry about, but it can be disconcerting if you're looking at it, or if someone else is looking at it and say you need to get someone calmed down because you're just trying to help out. Here, here's this gauze, put this on your forehead. That's, because you're in a wreck, put this on your forehead. It's maybe they're freaking out because, oh, blood's everywhere. You let them hold that on there, apply pressure and stop the bleed, and then they can clean themselves off and they realize, oh, it's not the end of the world. You've done a lot for that person, and just a little bit. You're not packing a giant duffel bag full of medical gear. um and we went a little bit down the rabbit hole on this, but I think this still goes good to, if we circle back, we were just basically talking about bringing, if things to think about on going to an event. Maybe your kids, if you've
Events.
got a if you've got a young kid, take one of the compartments, out of your diaper bag. Maybe there's a zipper pouch on the side, and you throw, bandages, stuff you would generally think about your kid would need. And then maybe throw a few extra things in there, like we said, gauze, maybe a tourniquet if you've got room. And then guess what? That's with you everywhere you're going to go, to your kids not wearing diapers anymore.
Man, I thought I was going to need something this week. I got my ass slammed on the mat this week, and my ribs, God, my ribs hurt. I thought I cracked a rib at first, but I think I just pulled something, but I was like, yeah. I was like, oh,
Mhm.
need something.
Yeah. Sucks getting
But
old.
yeah, I tell you what, man, I tell you what, there's a younger guy in there with us too. And like, he just got out. So he's getting a master's there, but he just finished basic. He's going in the military after he gets his master's. But I mean, super fit kid. The other guy that's doing the teaching, I mean, he's super fit. I mean, he can just, regardless of like his technique is, he can out muscle me. So for me, it's technique, right? And we've been gym more. I'm, trying to build more strength and mobility and things like that. But yeah, like, man, I'm sitting there like in the week before that, he would get in top mount, and like I'm still learning, trying to figure out like where to go, and like he can get into a position and just sit there, and I'm like killing myself trying to get out, he's just letting me gas myself out. And
Yeah.
yeah, it sucks. But yeah, this week I got my ass, got some humility put back into me.
Yeah.
I had an opening last week and I tried to go for an arm bar and he made me pay for it big time. He was like, "Oh, you've been watching some YouTube videos, huh?" I was like, "Oh, shouldn't have done that." But
start tapping out before anything happens.
Yeah, pretty much like, oh, anticipation. But no, but yeah, anytime that you're looking at going out to crowds, public, anything like that, consider having an option for if you get separated, non-permissive or permissive tools that you're carrying, and know how to use them. And medical gear, being aware of medical gear and your, empty-handed skills, what you're capable of. And if, and that's not saying that, do I think everybody should have some sort of empty-handed skills? Yeah, I believe that's true. But, just being real with yourself of where you lie, because everybody's living a different life. Everybody comes from, different places. And so we just have to kind of, I guess you could say, meet ourselves where we are, have the conversation with ourselves of where we are in our life, and just be real with ourselves. So, yeah, that's about it. We went a little bit longer than I expected we would in this conversation.
Yeah.
We got down the rabbit hole on the first aid stuff, but yeah, so those of y'all that are watching this on YouTube, we appreciate it. Make sure you subscribe to our channel. If you haven't yet, go and subscribe to our Instagram page. If you're listening on auto, smash that like button, hit the follow, and make sure you get updated on new episodes that we have. If you like what we're doing and there's anything that you think is beneficial to you, share it to your friends, share it to your family. That's going to help get the word out about what we're doing. And our goal is to educate and help other people be the best defenders that they can be. So I hope y'all enjoyed this episode. Until next time, I hope everybody has a wonderful week and stay safe.